The other aspects to this is that, first of all, a lot of times you have to remember that these thoughts that we have that will seem to be these judgments, they happen, first of all, usually there'll be some kind of neutral thought. You're thinking about something, and often you're probably trying to work through them. So look at this. First of all, if you are trying to work through or avoid or not get rid of these thoughts, that should give you two indications. One, that you're afraid of the thoughts and that this whole perspective is correct, applies to your situation. And two, that the thing, and think about how much time you spend trying to get rid of this issue and how that means that your brain is amplifying exactly this issue and how this is becoming the focus of your life. Because this is the case, you can then really be sure that this issue is not the fact that you were experiencing actual judgments. The thing is that the process of this amplification mirrors what is described psychologically as phases of consent to sin. Because what we've been taught is that there's a suggestion, then after there's a suggestion, there's maybe a phase of struggle or an enjoyment of this sensation. So for example, if you have a thought of anger pops into your mind, we might have a sense that, we may have a sense that our appetites say, oh, yeah, I want to get even, or there's that initial boost of anger, of movement toward that, or a sense of, I'm disturbed that I'm getting angry. So that's that first phase of sin. There's no real sin yet. Then there's this phase of actually considering the sin. So it could be like if I say, should I beat up that guy? And yeah, there could be some sin in that phase. And then there's like, yeah, I'm going to beat up that guy or I'm going to throw the punch. Okay. So then those are the phases. So that the phase of, for impure thoughts, obviously, when we're going to, you can't consider it impure thought. Because of, but we can consider other kinds of thoughts, and then it's not fully a complete sin. But the thing is, we have to deliberate. And the thing is, and then there's also things like full knowledge. So we get around, obviously, the impure thoughts. We don't always commit a mortal sin whenever we begin to consider something impure, because sometimes we might not be reflecting at all, or those type of things. So that's important to remember. So or it might be, there might be other circumstances too. So there might not be, those type of things. But anyway, the point is that, so let's go back to the judgment. So the thing is, this thing of these these ideas come along, and it seems like you're going through phases of fighting off sin. But actually you're not. What's happening is that the fear is amplifying everything in your conscious and unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is supplying more thoughts because you're looking for them. You're looking for these thoughts. You're worried about these thoughts. It's just amplifying everything. And so these things are popping in not as suggestions necessarily of the devil. I mean, it could be stirring the whole thing up, but it's really just this normal process. You have this thing, they're amplified by fear, they're popping into your head, and then they're really important because your brain is really pushing on them and hating them. So it's like, it seems like probably the amygdala is probably really pushing at it, and so that feels like consent. Because you're like, oh, this is really important, and then your brain's like chewing on it, but you can notice that disturbance of it. You don't love it. And the thing is, it's like the brain is like latching onto it. This. It's like the sense that the mind is eating it and gobbling on it, but yet hates it. And I think that's an indication that this is kind of this intrusive thought. It's more like an intrusive thought than it is like a real temptation. And the real problem is, again, this is amplification through fear, which is launching it deeply into the consciousness. So there might be some part of you that is responding to it. There might be some appetite of maybe let's say anger or judgment. There might be some appetite that is responding somewhat to it, but it's likely that what's happening is that's an appetite, that's just the inferior part of your soul, and that's probably in the real scheme of sin, that's probably what you would call like the first phase, which is just the first movements of sin, or just the response of the natural appetites, that enjoyment or disgust phase. So there's probably no sin in even when this stuff is pounding into your head, even when these thoughts are intruding into your head, launching into your head. Because think about it, you probably say, I don't want to think this, or you just know you don't want to think it, and then boom, you think it. So that's the thing. It's like it's popping in not because you want it. It's because it's like a Google search engine. When you're in the unconscious mind is just going to respond. You say, okay, am I having any bad thoughts? It's like, oh yes, I am. It's just your search. That's how the mind works. So again, this is probably what's really going on there. The other piece of this issue of judgments that are intrusive is to understand that there's probably a difference. That this may not mean this doesn't come from moral theology, but this comes from logic. And it's gonna apply. Because think about this: there is a difference between facts and opinions. So, for example, if I wonder whether John has stolen something, that's not a judgment of John. That's an evaluation, an assessment, or an investigation. If I am really worried that I'm thinking someone's doing something bad, but I have no judgment about them, actually I have a misconception about what's going on in my mind. It's not a judgment to think somebody is doing an act poorly. It's just an evaluation. What the problem and the problem is the part of our mind that says, and I hate them, and they're an idiot, and they're terrible, they're awful, they should die. Whatever horrible thing, the mind going nuts in a type of hatred or judgment or belittling of that person is the problem. Not seeing something wrong. We're not called to be blind to the faults of others, but to forgive the faults of others. And for doing that, we have to see the faults of others. We shouldn't be trying to put out our eyes. And a lot of times, if you notice, some of the impulse of the entire thing is a desire almost to put out our eyes, to not see anything wrong with other people, because we're realizing the more, oh, I'm bad, I'm seeing something wrong, I'm seeing something wrong, oh, I hate it, I shouldn't think that about that person, and it's a sense of we're being attacked by something. And this again should lead us to this sense that, okay, there's something going on here that's not exactly, we're being attacked, and so we're in danger. And again, so that should make us again think the mind is just launching stuff in there. And even if there's some consent, it's still, again, not the real level. We're not dealing with judgment. We're dealing with misconceptions. We're dealing with something wrong here. This is not a thing of, it's like, this is a problem of, when Jesus says, he says, take the beam out of your own eye. This is actually something even different than this. This is like an eye. This is not a beam in our eye. This is like an eye. This is like an itchy eye or an eye disease or something like that. This is something else. We're not dealing with judgment. We're dealing with something that's going on. That's an actual type of weird effect in consciousness based on the perceived danger of these thoughts, which amplifies them, and then by amplifying them puts them into our consciousness in an extensive way. And then when they are in our consciousness in an extensive way, they are then responded to by maybe some of our appetites, even if these appetites were our fear, even if these appetites were our anger, or even something impure. But these whatever movement there is, this is still really only in those first movements of sin, the movements of the inferior part of the soul, the movements that are like that. That's not That's not really what's going on. We're thinking that there's something really important happening here, and that's what's holding the whole pattern in place. Because we think it's important, the brain stresses about it, the brain makes it into the substance of our lives. And this is what's going on. And once we realize this is what's going on, this entire pattern doesn't need to stick around for even one more minute. We are completely free, because that relief can be instantaneous by understanding that this is what's happening. We are not having this problem. This is like going to the doctor and you realize, oh, I'm in remission. I don't have this issue. The scan was wrong. This is the type of thing, like the X-ray was wrong. That's what's going on here. We have to just realize the X-ray is wrong. There's no way to train your mind, oh, I have to now think the X-ray is wrong. No, you see the results. Once you realize that this is what's happening, then you don't have to be scared anymore of any of these thoughts. Or these thoughts then can paradoxically, they then turn off. Or if they don't, doesn't matter if they don't. It's like, but because they just don't matter. They're not important. And the brain can let them turn off because it's not important for the brain to try to be resolving this whole thing about how you're judging people and how you're doing this and that and how you're so bad and how you're going to hell for judging people constantly. And this thing that's driving you crazy is not something that even has any importance, because it's a misdiagnosis. And that's why this is so important. Again, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.